Good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to Legal Notes with Mary Ann Charron and Ned Barron from the Charter Oak Law Group. I am Gary Byron. Great to see you guys this morning. How are you?
Fantastic, as always.
How was your week?
Good morning. It was good.
Was it busy?
Good. Yeah, it usually is.
I can imagine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you live in you work in a recession-proof industry, which is, well, I guess it's good for job security, but it's sad when you think about what you have to deal with on a daily basis. And how do you not get emotionally attached? I mean, I know there's a professionalism aspect of it, but there's a humanistic aspect to it as well, where these are individuals, these are people, these are human beings that are either in the midst of deteriorating physically or mentally, or have already passed on, and you're left with the aftermath to kind of clean up and sort out and legally follow through with the deceased's wishes.
Yeah, it can be mentally exhausting for us sometimes. I
can't see how it wouldn't be.
It's not the easiest.
Well, I think one of the things that makes it all worthwhile is that what we really our roles are to come up with solutions, and when you do help families or surviving loved ones come up with solutions, it kind of makes it all better.
Yeah,
well,
it does.
Not even emotionally for them, but at least we can help them take care of.
I think that I agree with
the really
you.
Tough.
I think
parts.
that sustains us.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. The issue of caring for parents seems to have resonated with our audience, and I guess let's continue that conversation from a week ago, but maybe take it in a different direction. Same topic, though. So today's conversation is really about supporting your elderly parents in their home.
Yeah.
So let's start with this. It's probably the most elementary of questions in this particular category. What kind of help do they need in their home? Where does it start?
Yeah, so last week we talked about the warning signs, right? So depending on what warning signs you see is going to give you the direction for what kind of help. Do they just need a housekeeper? Maybe they shouldn't be driving, and so they need transportation, someone to keep them to go out, because what happens is when we become older, we tend to isolate. And even though we want to stay in the home, we don't want to be prisoners in our home.
Sure.
And I think that COVID has demonstrated how difficult it has been for elderly people in particular to not have any social access or access to the outside. So transportation and having somebody who can take them to the park or go for a walk with them, just going into the grocery store and is really, really important. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's medication administration. Right. So we need to identify based on we talked about it last week. I used the term due diligence. So based on the due diligence, and it lets us know maybe they only need someone once a week, but maybe they need someone 2 hours every single day. And then I don't know, if we're talking about early signs, then they clearly need less. But it's really important to get someone in there to help out. Because as they decline, and instead of 2 times a week, it's 3 times a week.
Typically, how long does that regression take?
Well, it depends.
I think there is no
year
typical...
or 6 months or 2 years or...
Well, it depends on what time you catch it, right? How early you catch it. And then every person's, I want to say, body chemistry, brain chemistry. They may have physical conditions which would impact it. So maybe they have a heart condition, for example, right? And so...
Or diabetes or, any other kind of chronic disease.
Right. And that's going to impact the ability, how long they're going to need in at this stage, or how long they are at a given stage. People tend to, I want to say decompensate, but they decline in like plateaus. So you might see, they're at one level of functioning, and then we see whoosh, a decline. But then they may stay at that level for a significant period of time. I mean, both Ned and I have clients and people who we know who've been in nursing homes for a really long time with Alzheimer's, and they've been at this level for years, right? So there is no, Ned is right. There's no rule for it. And obviously, we're talking now about trying to keep someone in their house as long as possible. So let's do everything that we can, to keep them with the supportive services in the home, but have them start to get used to someone coming in.
Yeah. Meal preparation or paying their bills, like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
I guess maybe even transporting them if they have doctor's appointments.
Absolutely.
And things like that.
Especially if it can't be you, right?
Yeah.
Which is really an important consideration here.
Yeah.
That if you have a married couple that typically nowadays, well, pre-COVID, I should say, and after COVID, that both are working because that's a necessity that we have economically now. So where are you going to find the time? And
Yep.
This is probably the subject of another one, but we can talk about caregiver burnout.
Yeah.
And if you're a child that you're
Yeah.
working, you have children of your own,
Yep.
and you're trying to take care of an elderly parent who is declining or has declined. That's a recipe. That's the perfect storm. That's a recipe for disaster. And that this discussion today, we were really talking about how do you get help? Well, in both ways, right? If it's available within the family, that's fantastic. But if it's not, then we have to look at getting help outside the family. So meal preparation, for example, one of the ones that we all hear about is Meals on Wheels. That's a really nice, simple way where that they'll get deliveries, right? Once you get signed up for Meals on Wheels, that you get deliveries and the food is
Monday through Friday, and it's 2 meals. It's essentially like a small lunch. Well, you could choose whatever you wanted to, but it's a small lunch and a dinner. And there is a menu, depending on dietary needs and things like that. I can't say that it's always the best food, so it'd be nice to supplement it with something else. But if you want your parent to have something freshly prepared every day, that is a great alternative. And it's an easy alternative to sign someone up for Meals on Wheels. That's what the purpose of those programs are.
Well, the entrees are typically frozen, so
and some are, some it depends. Like they've different ones.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
but they'll also include milk or other things that are not frozen.
Yep. So I have somebody who had an option of the frozen, or the freshly prepared, every day. So he chose the freshly prepared. He didn't like it, and then he made a choice to go to frozen. But he did have somebody who was there with him who was taking the frozen meal out in the morning, making a decision and then assisting with heating it up. So
how many hours a week typically is required to help and assist?
I think to make it worth it, I like to see at least, well, if someone's doing transportation, it could easily be up to 4, right? So you take the person to the doctor's office, to the grocery store, so if you're providing that kind of service and it includes transportation and you actually have to go somewhere, you can't do less than 4, I don't think.
4 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, or at a time slot. So maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 hours.
Okay.
Right? Maybe it's somebody who just comes in the morning to sets up medication and make sure that they eat and get ready for the day, for example.
About companionship? I've talked to elderly people. I've talked about where their only interaction with a live human being is the mailman.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly right.
And it breaks your heart.
It does. It really does. Companionship is important. That piece of social interaction. If you know who the companion is, it's better. I mean, Ned and I think, I don't remember which show we talked about it on, but that's where you're ripe to have someone take advantage of you. If the neighbor starts to become that companion and, can move their way into your life, so you have to, as a family member, you have to be cognizant of who you want to have as that companion,
Well, I think also to your point, Gary, is that if you're in a situation where a person does not have family members, either don't have family members at all or close by, and do not have natural friends, right, or have friends that it's tough at that age, I think, or actually for people like me, it's tough at any age, you're busy and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Where do you develop new friends? And I will say that many towns have senior centers. And that is a place. Yeah, that's a place where I have seen that not only can you go there for
meals.
Friendship, companionship, meals,
yeah, but
there's staff. There's a director, and there's typically staff there, and they are watching out for all of the people, their clients, so to speak, who are coming there and using the senior center. And they're also typically a great source of information. So if additional supports are needed,
right.
well, you might be able, talk to the senior center director and say, hey, my father comes here every week, but we're noticing that he needs some other supports. Can you recommend people or some recommend some supports that are available to him out there? So that's a great place.
I was just it's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking that senior centers have been lifesavers for people, because they've been able to develop friendships. They do generally have meals. It might be a little extra that you have to pay, but there's usually transportation. So there's the buses that can come and can, pick you up and take you to the senior center. And oftentimes they have a nurse on staff, so it's a huge lifesaver. For a lot of people in so many different ways. COVID, we talked a little bit about that earlier, has made that so difficult for people because they lose that interaction at the senior center. But absolutely, that's
so. Then what is
a great option.
How are senior centers then being substituted? COVID. Now we're slightly a tad bit over a year into this.
Yeah,
and
Zoom.
But
you got to take that chair yoga classes on Zoom now.
There's some seniors though that don't Zoom or don't even know what Zoom is.
I know.
And it's not the same as live activity or interaction with somebody in front. And it's a generation that's really not that internet savvy.
Well, there are also some people who don't want to go to the senior center.
Yeah. That's true.
I have talked to seniors before that say, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so now back to your original question of, well, how do you get them companionship and support and all that?
Yeah.
And typically when we have clients who ask us about that, there are really two ways to do that. Well, one in particular is to bring someone into the home to help care in the home, whether it's come in for hours or to live in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then, so those are a couple of things that I think that would be great to talk about today. And what are the two different ways to do that would be to hire someone privately, or to use an agency,
right?
And so I think we should probably get into discussing what are the pros and cons of doing each one.
Yeah, let's do that.
So
how do you differentiate them first?
Well, okay, so private is maybe you have a friend or you know someone. And
that's qualified, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you can go into, I don't want to say Craigslist, but like Rare Reminder, there's things that there are people who do advertise that they are companions, so you can find them that way. Oftentimes it's word of mouth. And there is someone who you know or who you have chosen to hire, and you pay them yourself. Neither Ned nor I suggest doing it under the table, They are being paid for a service, and you should either 1099 them. Ned and I have both had circumstances where we have actually, because we've been involved, we have done regular W-2s, or you have them on payroll, which brings up insurance requirements and other things like that. But if you want to protect yourself and you want to protect the person who's coming into your home and things like that, you need to be cognizant that you probably want to have the extra insurance requirements. When you W-2 someone, you need workers' comp insurance too. So,
and I think we should qualify what 1099 and W-2 means. A 1099 is a
subcontractors,
right? It's a tax document that is issued at the end of the year. To show how much you paid someone for services during the year. And that someone would be an independent contractor, as you just said, Gary. So they are holding themselves out there as this is my business, that I am, Ned Barron caregiver and incorporated. And so,
or not incorporated.
Or maybe not be incorporated, true.
And
but
you would be in charge of deducting your own taxes with a 1099.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So you're creating this employer-employee relationship, right? So that's what you're doing. And so the parent who needs the care, who's going to be paying for your service. And like I said, both Ned and I have seen enough circumstances where people just pay someone under the table, right? We have seen it. We don't recommend it, because it is under the table. And we are lawyers, so we want to keep our license.
Right. There are tax implications that you, as the person who's employing that caregiver, can get in big trouble. Remember the nanny, the nanny
scandal,
controversy, or scandals or controversies,
right? Where
people had hired nannies and were paying them, but they were employees and they were required to be paying employment taxes. And so they got in big trouble for that.
Someone who was running for office or something like that.
Yeah, that was the one that came. That was the big.
That right? Oh, now I'm intrigued.
Yes, it happened.
It was a bunch of years
ago. And got in trouble because someone found out through digging that there was a nanny who was taking care of, I think there was more than one child, and but was paying them direct under the table. It wasn't a good scene.
Right, and I think it submarined their it was maybe a Senate confirmation hearing or something, and it came up. So
came up and it was done.
Right.
It was over.
So that's one of the cons of hiring someone yourself, and because you have to be careful. You need to talk. If you do that, you need to talk to your accountant. You need to make sure that you are in compliance with the law, so that you don't get in big trouble down the road.
And so oftentimes people do it because it's less money. Right? So it's generally cheaper than using an agency. Mm-hmm. But one of the logistical problems is, what happens if that person's sick?
Well, that was one of the questions I was thinking of as well. If you were an agency, I would think they'd have coverage for that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so that's certainly one of the things that the agency can provide. But if you're private paying someone and they get sick, let's pretend they get COVID and they have to self-isolate for 10 days, as an example. Or let's not use that example. They just want to go on vacation. Mm-hmm. They have a sick child, right? All of those things can happen. You need to have a plan B when you hire someone privately. And, it can become for the child an organizational nightmare to make sure that there's coverage. Dad calls up, I thought Sue was supposed to be here, but she's not here. Is she running late? Did something happen? He has a doctor's appointment. Who's bringing him to the doctor's appointment? It can be very stressful.
Well, and another, just to add to that, is that we've also seen cases where caregivers just didn't show up.
Oh, yes. We certainly have.
And the excuse was, I just can't work with this person any longer. And what was happening was that this person who already had some issues, the that's being cared for, they've gotten worse. That, let's say, it's Alzheimer's, and sometimes Alzheimer's people can become, verbally abusive or even physically abusive. But let's just say that it just was verbal, right? That and it just started out in little ways, and this person took offense, but they didn't say anything, and then they just finally had it one day and said, "I'm done." Now,
it could be something like that. It could be somebody who's a diabetic and really wants snack food. And you have a caregiver who's really trying very hard to make sure that they maintain their diet and their blood sugars appropriately. And you have someone who's not cooperative. And then you do have a caregiver who's going to quit, right? So not a matter of just not showing up because their kid is sick. They quit on you. And now what do you do?
I hate to think that senior has no one then coming in to check on them or care for them. Folks, you are listening to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law Group. Mary Ann Charron and Ned Barron. I'm Gary Byron. That's just thinking of that is it's not just sad emotionally. It can be risky with their health, particularly when it comes to medications, particularly when it comes to nutrition. What is a geriatric care manager?
Yeah. You want to take that? I don't care.
Well, my layman's interpretation of a geriatric care manager is somebody whose expertise, or they hold themselves out to as someone who has expertise in geriatric, meaning the issues of elderly people and what their needs are. Mm-hmm. And so this is typically a person who has it's basically a consulting business. And
usually a social worker background. Okay.
True. Yes. Who has a special knowledge about what the needs are and what the solutions are for elderly people. So a geriatric care manager will oftentimes be hired to do an assessment, whether it's to keep someone in the home or to
understand what their needs are.
Right. Understand what their needs are, maybe and the recommendation might not be to stay in the home. It might be assisted living, or it could even be nursing home. I mean, it really depends on the situation. Yeah. I think for most of us that what we are trying to do is to help people stay in the home.
Right. So you do the assessment in order to keep them in the home. In my experience, what they would provide is they become particularly valuable if the child or children are out of state and don't have the ability to visit their parent on a regular basis. You do need someone who can be your eyes and ears and who can...
Sure.
I was just talking about trying to coordinate all the care and deal with all of that. You're hiring someone to do that for you. And if that person has that particular level of expertise and background, then they're going to be better at it than you would be.
Are there ever any circumstances in which the children agree on a companion or someone who's a caregiver, and their parent doesn't get along or have chemistry with or good rapport with, or just plain old doesn't like them?
Oh, yeah.
And how sticky can that get? Is it as simple as just requesting someone else, or what if the elderly is just non-compliant, regardless of who comes in, is just refusing it but needs it?
Yeah. So
well, if you're talking about the case where instead of hiring your own independent person that you are using an agency, the good news is that they typically have other caregivers that they could switch out.
All right, so that's good. That answers the first part of my question. It's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But what happens if the elderly is just not receptive to anyone?
Well, someone, most likely the child, is going to have a conversation with the parent and say, look, we're trying to keep you here, Dad. So you got to work with us here, because otherwise you're not going to have many options. I mean, you got to have that conversation. Sometimes it works, and sometimes the parent will be like, fine, I don't care. I mean, every parent has their own personality and things, but you do have to have that conversation and say, if you want to stay here, you got to give this a try. You got to do something, Dad.
Because the alternative is, and this, I hate saying this. I don't want to say this because it sounds so cruel.
Yep.
But the alternative is you're going to have to go to a nursing home.
Yep.
It almost sounds like a threat.
It is.
Well,
and as I said, I hate saying it. But
but
it's the reality that if you cannot safely stay in the home, then what's the alternative? It's to be someplace where you can be safe.
Yep.
And ultimately, that is really what we're all trying to do for our elderly parents or friends and all that, is to make sure that they're safe, that they're healthy, and that they're happy. And
I just know that your heart may be in the right place, and I understand that some of this care isn't a luxury; it's a necessity.
Yeah.
But how do you help someone who doesn't feel they want or need to be helped?
Well, if they're competent, right?
Yeah.
Then we all have the choice, right? We all
they
have
don't
choices.
allow, but if they don't allow you,
well, that dynamic actually goes to competence,
right?
That if competence, one of the kind of standards would be that you are capable of taking in information and making informed choices that are for your benefit. If you are incapable of doing that, if you are saying, I don't want someone to come into the home, but the alternative is that you are not bathing, you're not eating, you're not taking your medications, you're not going to the doctors, you're not doing the things that you need to do to stay healthy, then are you competent?
No.
Well, sometimes the answer is no, you're not competent, but both Ned and I have seen people who are competent and have chosen that as a lifestyle. Right? It's not our lifestyle. It may not be what I want. But if you are competent and you make those choices, right? People are entitled. We have, we'll call it free choice. We have the ability to make that. I don't watch TV. Someone else does. I mean, we all have certain things. But if somebody is competent and found to be competent and that is their choice, then you have to walk away. That is a chosen lifestyle, right? We all have friends who have chosen to not take medication for something, and they have weighed the pros and cons of it. That's their choice. And we do have to, I feel strongly that as long as there's competency, we have to honor the choice. We don't have to like it. We can keep watching it. We love that person. But
if they can articulate that, what you just described, if they can say, I understand that if I do not take this heart medication, that I will likely shorten my life and that it could lead to a heart attack in a short period of time or over whatever period of time. If you can say that and to say, this is my choice, then obviously that in that case we have to honor it. But if you're just saying, no, I don't want to take it, I don't like the way it makes me feel, then that's not an appropriate answer.
Right? Folks, you've been listening to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law Group, Mary Ann, Charron, and Ned Barron. Boy, oh boy. I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's just so much that we can discuss. I'll tell you where I'd love to have you check out their website at www.charteroaklaw.com. Again, charteroaklaw.com. Write down some questions. They'd love to hear from you. You can contact them as well at 860-570-1229. Again, 860-570-1229 with offices located in Bloomfield, Danbury, Norfolk. Boy, everywhere. And you can email them as well if you got private matters. Maybe we can get your question. If you don't want to leave your name or town, we can maybe get your question answered right here on the airwaves. Who knows? Maybe even next week. Legal Notes at charteroaklaw.com. Again, Legal Notes at charteroaklaw.com. For Mary Ann, Charron, and Ned Barron at Charter Oak Law, I'm Gary Byron. Until next Saturday, have a good one, everybody. So long.